and the dancer dances.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another segment of Moved by the Music. Joining me today is an incredible singer and songwriter, Aaron Todd. Aaron has been involved in the music industry for decades. He has worked with Earth, Wind, and Fire, Chaka Khan, and countless others. Basically, Aaron has been a featured performer on practically every corner of the earth. He's also a multi instrumentalist who has been in numerous magazine articles and interviews about his performances and the amazing life that he's living. We have a lot to talk about. Welcome to my show, Aaron.
Hey, Desiree, thank you for having me.
I want you to start out by letting everybody know your history and how you came to even develop your passion for music, whether it's singing, writing, or performing. How did it all start for Mr. Aaron Todd?
My story is kind of I think it's part of the black story of soul music, pop music. My dad was a minister, so I'm a preacher's kid, and I started playing in church. My father was sort of a jet set evangelist, and I would actually, you might consider it, I'd go on tour with him to these big tent meetings when I was 5 or 6 years old. I was the little kid playing the piano before my feet could touch the pedals.
Oh,
So
wow.
that was my introduction to music, and in that environment, I was always around the instruments in the church. I was always around really, really great musicians. So I developed a love for music during that period of time.
Wow. Okay, great. And a lot of times, like you said, it does start out in the church, right? You have, your instruments in there, you have people singing in the choir, and there's a lot of energy that, is involved with church. So thank you for sharing that. So I noticed something. You have the name New Hippie everywhere. How did the name New Hippie come about? And was it something you came up with, or did somebody else come up with that? What's the story behind that?
Um, my approach to music has been one that sort of embraces. I mentioned that I'm a kid that grew up in the church, but I had an older brother uh, who was a lot older than me that really introduced me to a lot of the music from the 70s and 80s, particularly artists like Joni Mitchell and um, James Taylor and a lot of those folks that came out of the 60s and into the 70s. So as I was developing as a singer-songwriter, people would often say that I was kind of like a new hippie. Um, and I always liked that because I have an affection for um, that period in time where people were trying to use music in a way to change the world. And in a lot of ways they did. And you had artists, particularly, African American artists like Sly Stone, um, that were really cutting edge and were hippies. You had the P-Funk movement. Those were cats that were coming out of that experience. And um, in my work, I like to think about what I'm trying to do as a songwriter, um, in the context of being sort of a new hippie that focuses on music and vibrations, to create love energy that can in some way change the world.
Right, right, and that love energy that you just spoke about definitely comes out in your music, and I think that's a really neat name. And I was just interested, New Hippie. It's something
Yeah.
that people are going to be attracted to, and it's a conversation piece because you want to know, well, how did that name come up? We think about the word hippie, we think about the word new. So how did you put the two together? And you did a great job explaining that. That makes a lot of sense now that you have explained that. So, Aaron, you've worked with so many people. I mean, from everywhere, from all genres. Tell me who has been the most memorable person you worked with and why. I know there's tons of them, but pick one.
Um, I, I think back to a moment early in my career in LA where I was recording at Studio 54, which is not the Studio 54 in New York, but it's a recording studio that was in Pasadena. And at the time that I was there, Chaka Khan was also recording there. I don't know exactly what the deal was with her relationship with Warner Brothers, but I know that she was doing some independent recording at that particular period of time. This is after the big hit Through the Fire and Ain't Nobody, and so at that moment she was at Studio 54. I remember her recording a song by Joni Mitchell called Hissing of Summer Lawns, which Chaka loved. So anyway, at that particular period of time, we were in the studio at the same time, and one night I was in the studio singing, and Chaka came into the control room, and she gave me a high sign that she dug what I was doing, which was very special. And then later on that night, Chaka sat on drums, and I played piano, and we jammed for about 45 minutes. And for me, that was a very, very memorable experience.
That's awesome, for her to, acknowledge and let you know that, you're doing a great job. That's incredible. That's great. Thank you for that story. And along with, her being one of your most memorable people that you have worked with, what about your most memorable experience as far as something maybe funny or interesting that happened while you were on tour or working with someone? Anything interesting or funny or something that was just strange that happened that you're always going to remember that experience?
I think the first time that I actually was in the room with Stevie Wonder, and it was odd. It was at Lou Rawls' funeral, and Stevie sang. It was amazing. He sang this version of His Eye Is on the Sparrow that still gives me chills when I think about it.
Oh, wow,
a really special
yes.
experience. And I remember being sad that day because I thought, this is my chance. I'm literally just a handshake away from Stevie, but it wasn't the right time.
Okay.
It was a funeral. It was one of those moments where this is not the moment. But we later had a moment, just a couple of years later, at NAMM, where I was personally introduced to him, and that was a very, very beautiful experience. And I've been able to network and break bread with him on a couple of occasions since then. But that was I think a strange moment where I'm grateful I was able to have the sense to be still.
Yes.
And sometimes as artists, that's a thing that's hard for us to do. But sometimes it's not your time, it's not your moment, and we have to have faith in the universe that the moment will come around. And when it does, it's a much better way, maybe to break bread with somebody that you've respected for a really long time. And of course, Stevie is he's obviously he's an icon, but he's very special for me as an artist. He and Prince are probably two of the most influential artists that I tap into when I think of what I would like to be when I grow up.
Okay. And Stevie is wonderful. His music is timeless. And what you were saying about time, with knowing, you're at the funeral for Lou Rawls, you realized that it wasn't the right time. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from Victor Hugo, that there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. I love that quote because it just goes to show, no matter what's going on in your life, in the world, and somebody else's life, nothing's going to stop that moment when the time is ready, when the time is right, like you were saying. You know internally, that the time wasn't right, but, you put those things out there in the universe, and guess what? The time came around again.
That's right. And when it does come around, you can see that the seed of you being patient bears fruit in a way that is much more valuable than to try to push your way into a situation maybe where it's not your time.
That's right. I love that you shared that because, patience is something that many of us struggle with. We live in a society where we want everything now. We want things quickly. But like you were saying, you can feel, you can sense when the time is right for certain things, and when it's not. And what makes a difference between one person and the next person is that ability to acknowledge that and just wait for that time to come around.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
so you also mentioned the NAMM, and
Yes.
you're involved with the National Association for Music Merchants, which is kind of broadened to an international association. So for those who aren't familiar with the organization, how would you explain it to them?
What I would say is it is a buyer's conference for music manufacturers. And so often what will happen is you'll get all of the biggest companies, and they are sort of selling the latest products that they have to put into the marketplace. They're networking with retailers and artists in a way that happens sort of on this huge platform. If you know the Anaheim Convention Center, you know how huge
It's
that
huge,
place is.
right?
Yes, and it is a meeting place every year for artists like myself to network with the manufacturers that endorse me. So, for example, I'm a Casio artist, so I am at the Casio booth every year.
Okay.
And so it's a really, really excellent opportunity for artists to network with the manufacturers. It's an excellent opportunity for the manufacturers to introduce new products. And so that's NAMM in a nutshell.
Okay. Now, if somebody were interested, I know the conference has already concluded for this year, within January, right? For January for this year?
It starts, January 2019, right.
Okay, so for this coming up year in January, how can somebody become involved in that conference? Would they have to have a special pass or be invited? How would they be able to associate themselves with that?
Yeah, NAMM is it's closed to the public event, but there are ways for the public to get passes, and the best thing to do is go to namm.org and look at it and see for an insight to artists that are looking at trying to build a relationship with manufacturers. It is my suggestion that even if you have to buy a pass to get there, that you go, that you get a chance to understand what it is and how it works and how to interact, particularly for independent artists and musicians in particular. It's a way to build relationships with manufacturers of strings for guitars, obviously, keyboards, drums and percussion, any variety of instruments from, woodwinds and other instruments, what we call band instruments, to the latest technology in computer software and technology that's used to create music. All of that is there.
Right.
And so it's like a big marketplace. And I think that for artists that are serious about finding a way to network in this business, at NAMM is a good place to start. And again, if you go to NAMM, if you go to the NAMM website and you look up NAMM 2019, all the information is there in terms of how the public, people who are not, for example, endorsed by a manufacturer, people who don't work for a music store or music shop that might be a buyer at NAMM, there are ways that the public can get a pass. And I don't have all the details on that, but I know that it's available on the website.
Yeah, well, thank you for that information. I know people would be interested in that. It kind of reminds me of basically is similar to the American film market that happens, for producers and actors, with NAMM being for musicians and people who are involved in music, which is an awesome opportunity to get out there and, meet people and meet the manufacturers. So thank you for sharing that information.
Oh, you're welcome. It's similar, for example, if anybody is familiar with television, there's a conference called NAPP, which is the National Association of Television Producers and Executives. and that is a very similar kind of buyers conference type environment. Yeah, so it is, but it is a big deal.
Oh, yeah.
And on the West Coast, it is the biggest conference. They do another one on the East Coast, and then there's one in Europe that's very similar called, I think it's called Music Mass. That is a similar thing. And then I think they do one in I can't remember if there's one in Nashville. I think there is. So there's New York, Nashville, and then LA.
And LA.
Okay. The three states, yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I wanted to ask you a question because something stood out to me that you had written, actually. You said, words matter. Whether we agree or not, what we say must leave open a possibility for future dialogue. And through dialogue and connection, perhaps a moment of compassion for one another. And I love that. And it's so true because words can build bonds and they can also break bonds. What is your style of communicating in a world full of technology? I mean, everything's done through technology. And do you miss that personal connection that one-on-one, in-person communication involves? Or has your experience been pretty good with social media and the explosion because it's everywhere?
That's a really, really intuitive question. And for me, I think that we have to start with connection first. And we can have true connections online. For example, you and I are connecting, we're vibrating right now as we dialogue with one another. And if you take this ability that we have to use technology in the way that we're using it, you can have meaningful connection, but it doesn't happen without thinking about what we say to one another and thinking about how we say it to one another, and making sure that the words that we speak don't do damage.
Right,
and
absolutely.
I think that it's a hard thing for a lot of people to learn in the online world because it's so easy to say things because you don't feel the impact of that on that person. But it doesn't matter if it's online or if it's in real life. It does matter. Words do matter, and how we use language to communicate with each other, I think, is the life or death of us.
Oh, yeah, most definitely. And I'm so glad that you shared that. People need to be, aware that even though they are, communicating online and they're behind a keyboard or behind their phone or their tablet, the other person who's perceiving the information, perception is everything, right? So you're getting information back from someone, but it may be, received differently than it meant to be sent. And I think sometimes people don't realize that, words can be misinterpreted and things like that because everybody's going to have a different take on what they're seeing on the screen, which is an important factor. Because I know people now, even those people who are involved in the industry, who don't really care for technology too much because they don't understand the point of it. Oh, why can't I just sit down and talk to somebody? I'd rather just sit down or, have a one-on-one conversation. And technology is just not going anywhere. It's just getting more and more and more deep as we continue on. And you have to kind of catch up to everything, it's an ever-changing world.
How about we think about technology like a tool? It's like a hammer and nails. And how you use that tool can build a house or can break things down.
Yes.
Technology is that. And I think about it a lot because I operate in a world of electronic music, right? Synthesizers and computers and samples and loops and all of this kind of stuff. But at the nut of it, the core of it, I'm a soul artist. I'm an artist that is reaching out to use the technology in order to tell a story. But that story has to be served by the technology. You use that technology as a tool. So I try to use social media in that way, but I think of it like a conversation. So when you look at my social media pages, you'll see what I hope is a conversation. You know, I do a coffee and you thing, or I do a Tuesday haiku, and I think that it's a dialogue that happens as opposed to it being, you know, y'all look at me, I got this new thing that I'm doing, and I am the greatest, I am the best at everything, and and for me, that doesn't serve the purpose that I feel like I'm meant to serve. The object of this is for me to be a vehicle for art to flow through. And we can use the technology to do that if we take care. And if we remember that it's a tool to be used to serve the story.
Absolutely.
And not the other way around.
Absolutely. And I love what you said about that, because it is a tool. You know, you can use it to better a situation, or it can make it worse. And I know that you're doing so many different things and having so many things that you're involved with, that you have definitely found a balance with your music career and with technology. So that's awesome. And I noticed some tour dates and some things like that on your website. What's coming up for you?
Well, I am on the European tour right now. I was, when we started talking a week or so ago, I was in the Netherlands, and I had some shows that I did there. I'm back in the south of France right now, where I had done some shows prior to being in the Netherlands. And I'll be in central France tomorrow, doing some press there. And we are doing the work of just telling the story about, soul music didn't die. It didn't go away when, people stopped talking about neo soul. When D'Angelo's records, we waited 7 years or 10 years for the last one. It didn't go away during that period of time. There are great artists that are doing work to tell the story of our time, and I count myself among those artists. Whether it's soul, whether it's pop or rock and roll, it doesn't matter. But I'm in the world, and unfortunately, it's a very loud place, and sometimes it's really hard for independent art to break through. But that's why we have these dialogues. That's why we travel. That's why we play live, so that people can see it and hear it. And when they do, it immediately resonates. I mean, it's like, it's like you're talking to the inside of someone's being. And we see that whenever we play, whether it's in the States or whether it's overseas. And that's the connection that we seek. And it just requires us to travel. It requires us to do the work. You got to take it to the people. And I'm happy to do that.
Yes, you definitely are taking it to the people. And like you said, music, it transcends time and space and everything. And I'm going to get to that, some more of that in a moment, because it's just an incredible way to express oneself. And you're all over the place, like you just said, Netherlands and everywhere in Europe. And so how can people reach out to you?
There's the website, which is AaronToddMusic.com, or you can go to newhippiemusic.com or newhippie.com. All of them will take you to my space online. And New Hippie is NUHI, P as in Paul, IE.
Okay.
And so if you go to newhippie.com, you'll find me. If you go to newhippiemusic.com, you'll find me. If you go to Music, you will find me.
And it's not going to be hard to forget that name, New Hippie, anyhow. It's a catchy name. So one question for you about the industry. What's the most challenging aspect of being a musician? Now, you travel a lot, and you're here and there, and maybe that has something to do with the challenges, but is there anything else? What's the most challenging thing that you've run up against?
I think because the industry isn't what it was, it's opened up a lot of doors for independent artists to have access to the fans directly. But it's also a very loud place to be right now. So there's a lot of clutter and there's a lot of noise that makes it harder for people to find us. It's kind of like sitting in front of a TV with, 150 channels. It's kind of like that for audiences. And so our job, I think, is just to break through. And some of the ways to do that, for example, are I was here at this lovely festival here in Carcassonne, or actually in Chalab, France, which was hosted by a dear friend of mine, Vince. A lot of people will remember Vince. He was a prominent part of Sting's tour. And so anyway, festivals like this, which give us an opportunity as artists to reach out across the water to people who are looking for something. They don't know sometimes what it is, but when you hear real music, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Listen to Cy Smith. I'm a name checker because I love her and I love what she's doing. Another artist that I dig, who's doing really, really soulful work. Check out artists like Aaron Todd and listen to us as we try to put lyrical sense back into not just R&B or soul music, but into music in general, where we are, looking to try to tell a story. Look for us. And I think that's something that I would ask audiences to do. Tune in and support your independent artists that are out here. I mean, for us to travel and do the work we do, it's a heavy burden because a lot of times booking agents and promoters, they don't pay you to get here. You have to do the work to get here. And then when you get here, you got to hustle and you got to work hard. And those who have, made the trip across the ocean know what I speak of is true. And maybe back in the day, there were these big budgeted tours and things like that. But for independent artists, the way it is now is it is a labor of love. And it has to be, I think, a relationship that fans of this music and fans of independent artists have to take some responsibility on their side. Just, you find something that you love, support it. You see an artist that's doing good work and you listen to their work online and you see that maybe there's stuff on YouTube that doesn't cost you anything to do. Go to their website. Go to iTunes. Purchase their product. Support them. Sometimes there's cool merchandise that's available. Look for those kinds of ways to support independent artists that speak to you. I think that's the most challenging thing that we see in the world right now. It's a world full of stuff, and it's a little bit harder for people to find us. And when you do, y'all got to give us some love.
Absolutely. But, like you said, it may be a little bit harder for people to find some artists. But once they do find someone they love and they're resonating with, it's a done deal. They're a fan, they're a supporter, and music touches people in different ways. So everybody's going to have what they like.
And the beauty of it is that we have the ability to reach the world. I mean, that's the beauty of having the internet and all of those kinds of things. So I just think that that's just part of the story, though. The other part of it is that, once people find the artist that they love, I'll mention another artist who I love, Melanie Taylor, who's a friend of mine. She's done background vocals for everybody from, Bette Midler to Aerosmith to Barry Manilow. But my point is this is an artist that's been in the world, and she's been doing great work. Cy Smith, another artist that I mentioned, has been in the world. She's been on tour with, well-known artists, but they have a voice and they are they're out there doing, I think, really, really fabulous work. And, you know, an artist like Aaron Todd, who is, you know, doing this work because it's a labor of love. And we, you know, people don't know that we don't, you know, they think, well, you're on tour and why should I, you know, why do I need to, well, because it's a labor of love, and a lot of times we as artists have extended ourselves in a way that is a challenge. And so when you buy a CD or support us by buying a T-shirt or you know, make a donation on Patreon or many of the other ways that are out there, it really makes a big difference. And I know for myself, I personally make sure to say thank you, because it makes a big difference. And I work on having a personal relationship. I don't like to even use the word fans. I like to use the word friends, because anybody who has gone this deep with me, they're friends. And we are on a mutual journey together. And I think that's a much more beautiful way to live.
And I love that you said that it's a mutual journey. You know, you're on the journey together. You know, everybody's involved in your craft and what they love about you, you know, especially with what you're doing. And being that it's a labor of love, you know, people don't always understand. You know, they see something, or they see a picture, or they see a poster, and they, you know, assume sometimes that everything is glamorous. But, you know, what it took to get there is a whole other story at times, that people aren't aware of what happens behind the scenes and the details that go into the final product, which is important that you said, you know, it's a labor of love, and, you know, you're doing what you're doing because of a passion, because of a genuine understanding of what you want out of your life and how you plan on making a mark with your life, which is important to share. So my last question to you, Aaron, I know you're very in tune with the world and with music, just from talking to you. How are you moved by the music?
Well, I mean, I listen to everything, and I'm moved by everything that lifts us up. And it's not always about, you know, a lyric that's, you know, political, or a lyric that's, you know, hardcore, telling of the story in the hood, or anything in between, or even you know, sometimes it could be just a pop song that makes you feel good, you know. And so that was the reason that, you know, Pharrell's Happy resonated the way it did. And so for me, music is all of those things. It's all of our emotions. It's all of the joys and losses and happiness and everything sort of rolled up. And I think the artists that embody that are the artists that I love. I was in Holland again with a band called Charm Play, and they invited me on stage to join them. They're just a great pop band, and they write great pop songs. And for me, I love that. And I love being able to do that, and then to, you know, to listen to, you know, cats out of Europe that are doing, you know, really, really interesting stuff. You know, there was a tune that came out last year called Human by Rag and Bone Man. That, I mean, when I was here, it was crushing. But, and I know you heard the song, it's been in a bunch of ads and things like that here in the States, but that kind of raw, that raw nerve that hits for me, you know, that turns me on musically. I listen to that and I'm like, cool.
Right, you know? Gives you that goosebump effect.
Yeah. And I look for that, you know. I mentioned a couple of other artists that I love. I mentioned two female artists, sisters, that are doing really interesting work in their own special ways. They're independent artists that move me. And there's a lot of that in the world that I seek out. And unfortunately, I've been in the studio a lot over the last year and a half, and so I haven't had my ear to the ground as much as I'd like to. just because I've been writing so much, but I'm listening to everything.
Yeah, you are. You're busy putting in that work, Aaron.
You know, there's a lot of stuff that I'm digging, and I'm actually hoping, you know, on my way back, I've got a bunch of stuff on my iPhone that I've saved that I plan on listening to. So,
okay.
You know, I'm hoping that I end this tour in Iceland, and I'm hoping that I can, you know, on that journey, I'm hoping that I can spend some time to get out of my head for a little bit and just really, really listen and enjoy. I need to say something also about artists that have been around for a while that people need to pay attention to.
Sure, yes.
Look up Things.
Okay.
Things. Go online. Look up who Vince is. I happen to be here in his studio right now in the south of France, but I've had a chance to just break bread with this brother, and there's so much great music that he has not even released yet. But I think it is a treat to your ears to look at the magic of artists who are true artists and that are in this creative space that actually feeds you in a different kind of way. And I think Vince is one of those artists that I've been blessed to learn a lot from, and I'm really wanting to give something back by inviting people, encouraging people to listen and look at his story. He didn't start with Sting, but as part of his story, people remember sort of him as being discovered by Sting and going out on the big tour, the Wembley Stadium tours and all that kind of stuff. People may or may not remember that, but I said all of that just to say I think we're in a place in the world where we need to revisit true artistry. We need to pay attention to people that are telling the story of the time we live in a way that touches us. And if you're not listening to that on your radio, that means you probably need to turn the radio off and look for something else. It's just a suggestion.
That's just a suggestion. And, you know, it's good that you are the kind of artist, Aaron, that, you know, definitely values the value in other people and other musicians, and you see the passion and the art that comes from them as well, and you give them credit where credit is due. So Aaron Todd, it's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed this so much, and I wish you continued success in all that you're doing now and everything that you're going to be doing in the future.
I appreciate that so much. It's been a pleasure. I thank you for your insightful questions, and let's do it again.
You're welcome, and thank you.
I hope you enjoyed learning more about Aaron Todd. For more information, visit and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Desirae Benson.